favor. This is one more, please. How you doing today, Phil?
Great. How are you doing?
I'm doing good. I appreciate you coming. I know it's right before the season starts.
There's so much going on.
So much going on. Yeah, I think this week feels like a blur, but I feel like from today, which is Wednesday till Saturday, it's just going to go by fast. So many stuff going on.
Oh, yeah, it already is. I'm trying to do season previews for all the other teams on top of everything else that I'm doing as well. And that's quite an endeavor. So I tried to do like a scaled back version of it this year, but I never really do anything scaled back. So it's been an endeavor. I got through the East teams. I'm working through the West right now.
Okay.
So so those are all up on my Substack, which I'm sure we're going to talk about. But yeah, that's
for sure.
That's what we're here to do in part. Yeah. So let's dive in a little bit on whatever you want to dive into.
Yeah, for sure. I was looking at I'm subscribed to your Substack, and I've never seen someone actually dive into all the teams the way you did it, and you actually you were sort of bringing in the statistical parts of the team, but also something cultural such as the name of each kit that they're releasing this year.
Yeah,
I think that's a pretty cool thing to do, because it is about, of course, the main focus is soccer, but then having that extra, people are like, oh, then I'm gonna check out that shirt and see if they like it or not.
Yeah. Well, I thought it was important because it's part of the team's identity, and it's something to talk about at this point in the year. But I've always been interested in kind of the cultural elements and the facets of soccer, especially telling the MLS story and all that. A lot of it is for me about fandom and about supporters and how that's all kind of generated. And when I really kind of redove into soccer about 10, 15 years ago, it was really about, I would say, a lot of the players, players' stories and coaches' stories, things like that. So just kind of tending to gravitate into that and just being able to kind of get a sense of who they were and what they symbolized and all that, to me was as important and as compelling as actually seeing the athletes on the field doing their thing.
That's I like that approach, and I've seen it. I mean, I glanced over your books on online, which we're gonna talk about. But before anything else, in the studio today we have Phil West. He's a condecorated writer that covers, of course, Austin FC, but it's also written 2 books. The first one is 2016, is United States of Soccer.
Yeah.
And then the second one was in 2018. I can't remember the name of the book, but it was partly due after how to become victory, or how to
I believe that we will win.
I believe we will win.
Pathway to U.S. men's soccer victory. Something along those lines. There's a lot kind of to the subtitle. Yeah, actually, slight correction. So the initial version of United States of Soccer came out in 2015, and then there was a paperback version in 2016.
Okay.
And that's the one that I prefer, just because I got to put an extra year in there, and I got to go back and do some kind of minor edits here and there. Like the 2015 one, if you find it, that's pretty intact and for the most part, pretty representative. But I got the second pass with the paperback version in 2016, and that was just something where I was able to kind of go back and glance over it and make sure that it was as I wanted. So, and again, that extra year I think was pretty interesting to include.
Give you a little more depth.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, tell a little bit more of the story. So.
There you go. Here, you were also part of Striker Texas, and then in Austin FC, especially in the soccer community, Phil is pretty well known by releasing, I would say, articles in your Substack pretty much almost every day.
Yeah, it's gotten like that. It's weird. I thought I would do kind of 3-4 times a week. Off season's a little bit tougher, but things just kind of keep coming up.
Yes.
And luckily, I've been very happy to have a bunch of subscribers come on right away, and sometimes I'll get kind of ideas from things that they ask me, and sometimes I just feel there's a certain kind of responsibility to that constituency, those people that want this kind of coverage, that hunger for knowing more about Austin FC. So I want to oblige them.
There's just ever since Austin, of course, the team came and it was official, and then it opened after the first season. There's a sense of hunger in the city for the sport. I mean, of course, I grew up listening, watching soccer, and every chance I get, I'll pay attention to my teams, but that's always pretty general. But I never really got to experience something like how it is in Austin, where people that didn't know about soccer previously, now they're everything around it. Like whenever the season's around, their life really revolves around the team, and that for me, I think that's a huge win for culturally for the team, because you have people that really want to. I mean, they invest time, doing tifos or painting banners, everything, any way they can volunteer. Of course, there's always a couple missteps here and there, but for the most part, you kind of want that. And you also want, I always say, like, when it comes to soccer, I like how it is very passionate here, and it's not lukewarm. It's either you like it or you don't, but it's something to talk about all the time.
Yeah, I mean, I've lived in Austin since '94, and before that, I mean, like kind of way back, going to when I was a kid growing up in the 70s in Seattle. I remember the NASL version of the Sounders. I remember going to the Kingdom for like a practice with my soccer team and seeing those players. The Kingdom is an awful venue, by the way, but it was an interesting time because we had moved up from I was born in LA in the late 60s, then we moved up to Seattle in 75, and it was just like it was kind of nothing at that point. It was kind of out in the wilderness, and there wasn't that much going on. And then all of a sudden, the Sounders are ramping up. I think they started 74. Yeah, because obviously they're doing their 50th anniversary this year. And then within a few years of that, you get the Mariners and the Seahawks, and the Sonics are there for a while before they get unceremoniously yanked over to Oklahoma City. But you all of a sudden saw this kind of sports culture starting up in a city that really didn't necessarily have that before that to a great degree. So, you had a few teams here and there, and I mean, you did have the Sonics as kind of a mainstay, but it became kind of this really major city announced because of that. And I remember coming to Austin and, obviously several iterations of the Aztecs and kind of what happened there, all of a sudden it's like, oh, this team's moving to Atlanta, Orlando rather, and then the second version, it's like, oh, House Park flooded. Now we're out in Cedar Park and, it's not really going to work. Right. So, you had, well, not Cedar, it's Avery Ranch, I guess. It's not quite Cedar. Well, I guess Cedar Park's
ish
around there. Yeah. It's Cedar Park-ish enough, I guess. So you saw this kind of disappointment in people that were like really hardcore fans. And then I remember when, Josh Babetsky was starting to do the work around MLS in Austin, and there was this thought about bringing a team here. I was, kind of skeptical about the prospects of Austin being able to land it, because kind of the general pathway before that was you kind of proved it on the lower division level with USL. And then if you were, deemed worthy enough, then you would be awarded a franchise. And the whole, 2017, the whole pre-court talking about like moving the franchise, like that just was almost never heard of. There was only like one other instance, of that happening. Like that's how the Dynamo got to Houston, like the original Clash and then the original version of the Earthquakes moved over there. But that was something that just didn't happen in the league. And there was just kind of this forbiddenness about it, which I think is why, there was such animosity towards Austin at the very start. Like I remember one of the first things I was Sirius XM Radio, Tony Miola and Brian Dunseth, they were doing a show and they reached out to me because I was doing some work with the league by then. And I remember doing this interview with them. And the last thing I said was, "Don't hate us." And they're like, "Oh, no." And then all of a sudden, we kind of caught ire from a lot of people over the course of a couple of years. But, fortunately it all worked out. But it was, I mean, just at the time, it was just this thought of, this is not going to happen in Austin for reason A, B, and C. And then that all of a sudden completely got blown apart and rules got broken. And all of a sudden it's like, oh, Columbus gets to keep their team and then Austin gets a new team as well. And oh my God, we have a win-win situation here. And we're getting a team and we're
Yeah.
getting, this kind of identity around it. And then everything just started happening really fast. All of a sudden I'm in the Continental Club on a super hot day in the summer, meeting Josh Wolf for the first time,
So like say a little bit about that, how teams move from one place to another. In Mexico, it happens a lot or quite a bit.
Oh, yeah.
It stopped now because of the end of the relegation. But you always had the spots that moved in and out were always either Veracruz, Querétaro.
Yeah, you had the Monarcas who went to Mazatlan, right?
Went to Mazatlan.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's always, there's always some kind of movement, and a lot of it is just new owners come in, new owners leave, they want to take the team somewhere else. But I am glad that in the midst of everything, Columbus got to keep a team as well. So then, I mean, it does still, there's still, I don't know, there's still some animosity there, but at least there's something they can, okay, this is their team and they support. Because at the end of the day, it's kind of sad whenever a team it's not there anymore, and there's nothing for the fans to see or, cover.
Right.
So before anything, I just want to say thanks to everyone that checks out our episodes, whether it's on YouTube, Spotify, Golz TV. I really appreciate you guys. And I know for me, it's a blessing because your support helps this platform grow. And we'll continue to highlight the stories that have to do with soccer, culture, and life as we go in the year. There's a lot of local artists are going to be joining that, we confirmed the dates, so stay tuned on that. And some of the artists you've probably already seen their shows or whatnot, or going to be second rounds with them. So yeah, it's going to be a pretty cool year about soccer, but also music and art. So looking forward to it.
Yeah, sounds good.
I want to jump into your life story first. I always call this the life of the guest and the life of Phil.
Right.
So you were born in LA.
Yeah.
In the 60s, and then.
Yes.
How was your childhood? How did that shape the person you are today?
So my dad was in grad school at UCLA. I was born in 68. So, do the math. I'm old. So, and then my mom was a nurse. My mom actually, immigrated from Canada to the US.
Okay.
She's Quebecois. French is her first language. So my parents met. They got married. They had me. I had a great aunt and a great uncle who were really, really involved. They were kind of functionally grandparents, but they took a lot of care of me. So they started me reading and writing from like a very, very early age. Like I started reading when I was 2. It's crazy. So
wow.
Yeah. So I was definitely attracted to language. Definitely interested in expressing myself in that way. And again, I would just kind of burn through books as a kid. Absolutely voracious reader. Then we moved to Seattle when I was 6, and that was a little bit of a shell shock, obviously, right? So, we got there like in March of 75, and it just started raining immediately for like it seemed the next 2 months, right? So that was a little bit of a change, a little bit of a drag when you were 6-year-old.
You went from sunny to cloudy.
Yeah, you're used to being outside, and then all of a sudden it's like, what's all this rain? So, and then actually played some sports badly, which included soccer. So, and then basically just got into journalism more and more, and ended up, a lot of my first interest in writing was journalism. I've dabbled in some other things, but that was what I kind of gravitated towards from the start. Got into the University of Washington, started DJing at the college radio station, started working for the paper, focusing on a lot of arts and entertainment stuff. And then about kind of halfway through my college career, there's this little movement called grunge that happened. So
Nirvana.
Yeah. I mean, I interviewed Kurt Cobain in like 1989.
Wow.
It was like one of the first articles on them. They had like just moved up from, they'd been in Aberdeen and then moved to Olympia and then moved up to Seattle. And so, knew their first manager, had, their demo tape that I was rocking around on the UW campus with a Walkman. So I still have that cassette somewhere in my garage. So, that just kind of, that dates me a little bit, but also, I mean, it was incredible. I mean, I got a fake ID so I could get into shows, because a lot of really good shows were 21 and over, and you couldn't, so.
And how old were you in that time?
with Kurt Cobain and, you know, kind of the early grunge stuff with Mudhoney and Tad and all that, I was like 18, 19, 20, 21. Okay. So yeah, I mean, when it really started taking off, yeah, I was, you know, 19, 20. Okay. So yeah, and then I stayed in Seattle until 94 and then came down to Austin at that point. So, you know, I'd done a band at that point, which kind of continued for a while here, got into Poetry Slam, which was really starting to heat up about the time that I got to Austin. I'd been doing some poetry readings up in Seattle, really liked the competitive aspect of it. So, you know, I was doing that. And yeah, so for a while, it was just kind of the sideline where I was doing artistic stuff. You know, I ended up getting into the Michener program at UT in the late 90s and ended up getting my MFA in poetry and playwriting. So lots of money in those fields. Yeah. and then just kind of pursued more journalism and PR and stuff like that after that. So, and didn't really, you know, kind of incrementally got back into soccer after that.
So whenever you were doing poetry and there was contests or competitions, what is, say for example, how was the scoreboard for it? Was it based on quantity, quality, or?
Yeah, so Poetry Slam, just kind of a quick primer. So basically, it's a competition that happens. There were cities all around the country that were doing it, and there were national competitions. And on the local scene, like it was at, initially it was at Emo's, in their old 6th and Red River location. Then it was at the you know, Electric Lounge, rest in peace, clubhouse of the 90s for so many of us. Ernie Klein, who you might know, famous author, like he was part of the scene back then. Mike Henry, who's done a lot of arts things forever. Karina McGlynn, who's a pretty accomplished poet now. Yeah, just a lot of people came through that scene in the 90s. So basically, you pick 5 judges from the audience. You know, you have them score the poems on a numerical scale, 0.0 to 10.0, you know, based on the quality, you know, based on the content, based on the performance. So a lot of people would end up memorizing their poems and like really doing these kind of big performative things with it, which included me, which was really kind of exhilarating and also kind of terrifying. Yeah. So, and my stuff, as you might imagine, tended to be really kind of fast, rapid fire, a lot of pop culture kind of things. And so, yeah, so we did these national competitions, and then we brought a National Poetry Slam to 1998 in Austin. It's also the year that France won the World Cup, and that was a World Cup that I really began to get into, and then just kind of more and more from there. So yeah, so these competitions, you would do them individually, and then you would get on these teams, and you would do these ensemble pieces as well as individual pieces. You had the option to do that, and just had a lot of people that were really, really into it. And Austin had this really incredibly fun, vibrant scene at the time. So yeah, in a way, it kind of in a way reminded me of supporters culture. Like here are these people that are really into it and they're pursuing this craft, and there's this kinship with other people in other cities that are doing the same thing, that, you know, everybody kind of understands each other on that wavelength. Like you might be rivals with a team, but still there's kind of a mutual respect that takes place among the supporters, just because you're doing this thing to kind of evangelize in a way, right? So in the case of supporters, obviously it's, you know, soccer is great, you should get into this, it does all these things. With Poetry Slam, same sort of deal, right? Like poetry is not boring, it's not staid, it's not something that, you know, is relegated to dusty books in a school. This is something that actually can be lived live performance. And, you know, especially at that time, there was, you know, stand-up comedy influences that were coming in, there were hip-hop influences that were coming in. You know, there were people from just like all walks of life. Like I got to know this really diverse, fun group of people from early adulthood, like all the way up to people in their like 60s and 70s doing it, basically just because everybody had this kind of shared love of spoken word. So yeah, so that was a lot of my kind of early time in Austin, you know, that, and then just also doing a lot of writing for the Chronicle, doing a lot of music coverage and things like that. Just kind of, again, something that I had been really, really interested in. So
one thing that, like, say, I always think of, for me, I'm writing sort of, I'm an accountant, I'm in finance, so it's very straight to the point. Like, okay, A, B, C, and anything else you need, I can give it to you later. But it's always, you know, they always, I remember doing business law in college, and it was very, okay, don't give the information to the person that's asking
Right.
it, but don't overdo it. But it's different because when it comes to something outside of that, it like say for example for here is whenever I'm trying to come up with a description of the episode, I'm trying to make sure it's good enough to where okay, you know, it covers summarizes what we talked about, but also short enough to where it fits in a tweet.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, and that one thing I would say that comes with like writing or reading, it's never really been my strength, but I've never really backed out from it.
Yeah.
But once I get into writing something or you know reading, I'll do it. But I've sort of diverted from that because I've done more of a visual and hands on.
Yeah.
But going into like say I was from when I read your articles or you know when I read stuff that you put out, it's very it is informational of course,
Right.
but it's also it has some kind of flow that okay there's more to your writing because of your past experiences and you think like say everything you've done in the past when you put an article, all those experiences are, you know, they're somehow flowing and interconnecting to where you're getting to your audience. And I think that's why a lot of people appreciate the way you're writing articles, especially about the team that we have here.
Yeah, well, thanks. Yeah, I mean, a lot of it is informed by just, you know, I've done journalism for a long time, but I've done creative writing. I still do different types of journalism. So I do some writing for the Daily Dot. So I do a lot of kind of internet culture stuff. I'm actually, you know, kind of trying to carve out the narratives in like, you know, a 2-minute TikTok, things like that. I'm doing some stuff again for Austin Monthly. Been doing that for about a year or so. Mostly kind of food space. You know, new restaurants coming up. I did something on a Superstition nightclub, which I later, when all the Amber Tarek pictures were coming out, it's like, I know that place. I know where he's hanging out. I did a story on their opening, which was, you know, kind of a uncomfortable, weird thing. It's not, you know, a place that I would typically hang out at, but, you know, I kind of got what they were trying to do and wanted to help them tell their story, you know, on behalf of my editors who assigned me that. And, you know, just kind of an idea we had. It's like, yeah, they're new, they're on the up and up. Let's kind of see what they're about. So, I mean, for me, a lot of that, it's about that kind of discovery. It's about finding the narrative. It's being able to share that. And then just also the kind of joy and enthusiasm with it. It's like, you know, I have definitely had low moments watching the team. You know, I mean, I straddle this weird line. I mean, obviously, you know, I love soccer. I love Austin. I'm going to love Austin FC. You know, I do consider myself a fan, but I'm not that same kind of fan. I'm not somebody who's necessarily just going to like plot myself into supporter section, right? So I'm taking on this role where, okay, I am chronicling it. I am covering the team. I have this kind of journalistic remove. You know, I'm not going to, you know, scream my head off and go nuts when there's a goal. You know, I might sneak in a little fist pump, but it's kind of more, you know, I'm thinking about, okay, how do I shape this? What does this mean? What is the narrative? Right. So, but generally it's fun. It's, you know, I get to write about a really vibrant, exciting sport, and there's really interesting personalities that are involved with it. So I just try to have that kind of enthusiasm shine through. You know, at the same time, there's definitely, you know, these kind of moments where fans will be, you know, certainly disgruntled. It will be very, very hard to, I'm thinking in particular about the Galaxy game in September that had the massive rain delay and then losing the 2-goal lead. I got home like 2:30 in the morning. Like, I was in the stadium till like, you know, close to 2:15. And it was excruciating. And then just to see the way that lead got lost and what happened, and just this kind of sinking realization that, this is probably not going to be a playoff team. That's rough. I mean, it's emotions get in there. And, you know, I think if you are covering a team, you feel those to a certain degree. But at the same time, I want to feel them in a way where I can be a little bit more objective with it. I can think analysis. I can think like kind of big picture type stuff. And again, it's about, not to reiterate too much, but it is about that storytelling. It is about, you know, seeing where that narrative is, finding, you know, making sense of, you know, a series of balls being kicked that you have just seen over the course of 90 minutes.
It's so whenever it comes to storytelling, you're writing, articles. You first, when you're writing something, you always think of how the audience is gonna perceive the article, or you're writing it based of your ideas and how you already have that information, right? So how are you gonna make that flow into the paper and connect the dots?
I mean, it's a combination of that. I mean, sometimes, yeah, it is kind of a sense of, and that's why, I will engage with other fans. I'll talk to people. I'm definitely part of several different Slack channels. I mean, a lot of that is just, part of it is because, yeah, this is my community. I like these people, but it's also in part, okay, what is everybody feeling? What is everybody thinking? What kind of questions are on people's minds?
Yeah.
So a lot of that is just kind of answering that and trying to seek those kind of answers. But yeah, sometimes it'll just be the story will just kind of tell itself. And then at other times it's like, oh, I have to seriously kind of dig for what this is and really kind of explore and do this kind of internal reverie to figure out, okay, what is it that I've just seen? Because you've been to games like that.
Yeah.
There are games where obviously, it's instantly kind of evident what is important, what is vital, what's worth kind of sharing and remembering about. And in some cases, it just does become really, really challenging. So, and I've done match coverage around the league as well. I did about 6 years before things at the Striker really started taking off in terms of my responsibilities, where I would do this kind of match coverage, and that kind of evolved and it got a little bit more templatized, but there were some matches where it's like, okay, what am I going to say?
Yeah.
Exactly. I'll always find a way because I'm a writer and I love the sport, but in some cases it's tougher than others. And then just again, and this is part of what, obviously the work you're doing, the work that all our colleagues are doing in the Austin media. I mean, it's a very awesome and robust and engaged media corps. Like I've gone to press conferences. I won't name teams necessarily, but I'll go in and there will be like, 2 other people in this Zoom, and occasionally that's happened with Austin, but for the most part, like it's pretty engaged. That there are people that are going to be there, that they're going to show up, they're going to ask questions. And a lot of these, it was just, wow, this is really kind of dour. This is really kind of moribund. Like there's not really all that much kind of engagement happening here with, the fans and the media and the team. And it's just, I mean, definitely value Austin FC because there's definitely a lot of work that's been put into that. And a lot of that really starts with just the kind of culture, the kind of place that Austin is.
Yeah. And it seems as maybe whenever I'm always going to say at the end of a bad season, people are going to be like, I'm done with the team, whatever. And then they start seeing the kit or, they start seeing the schedule and they're like, maybe I'll go. Sure enough, you see them in the stadium and then they're back and engaged and talking about it. But it's something that like, it just, it does, the culture here, it resembles what the city is, especially when it comes to the supporters, to the people behind it. After this, I'm going to go help with the TIFO practice,
right?
And it just goes with even the stories. For example, it's not just about 90 minutes that are played between our team against the other team, but it's also about everything behind it. For example, when Galaxy, the story behind Fagundes and him coming back, and then there was a late game and right before kickoff, the delay comes in. So. It's just so many. I always say I like it because once for sure it's not boring. Sometimes the results are not what we expected, and we wish we win every game, but also it's something. There's always something to talk about, and I think that's what's gonna help continue to make this grow. Because when I think about it, even when I talk to Rigo, and it's just how can we make this grow. We're always thinking about that. Like always, how can I? And I think that when you have that, and even doubting your own way of doing stuff, that for me is it's okay, and I'm okay with like having those rough moments because the moment like the team gets something, and they win something, it's gonna feel great. I mean, we've seen it.
Oh yeah,
when we beat Dallas here in the playoffs, and then went to LA. But imagine if we ever get to the point to where the magnitude of the impact that championship would give to the city.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, especially if it was in the stadium.
Yes. Yes.
So,
Especially if
I mean,
it's
in away championship, I'm sure a lot of us would take, but yeah, I mean, I'm trying to think of kind of the most dynamic, exciting moments, and yeah, it's been that big August win over LAFC. It was that playoff win against RSL. It's a playoff win against Dallas. It's like all of a sudden, yes, we get this. I mean, this is what you invest so much emotionally in this for, right? You have those moments that get gifted to you through, the work of the players, and I think to a certain degree, to the work of the fans. I mean, the players are always very, very attentive to talking about the fans and what they bring and the home field advantage. And, Stuver talks about not being able to communicate with, center backs because it's so loud. And loving that, thinking that that's an absolutely good thing.
Right.
Yeah. So.
And also like a little bit about, the media here. It's one thing, like I started seeing and I started feeling it for myself. Now that we took the whole break after the season was over.
Yeah.
How everybody seems to work in a unity. Everybody expresses, or everybody shares what they want to share in their platform based on their own experiences. And that's a good thing. And also, for example, independent, like smaller media outlets versus, a channel or recognized media, it doesn't really feel as there's us against them, or it's not a screw you guys. It's always there's always a conversation between both recognized media and then smaller media outlets, but it's just in person. Whenever everybody gets together, there's there's some kind of what's that word, fellowship, unity, camaraderie. There we go. And that's good too, because yes, we have different ways of thinking about the team or expressing how we feel, but everybody walks out and everybody sort of, okay, you know what? At the end of the day, we're in this for the same thing, but I also don't think of it as like, oh, you're taking my audience from you, and I'm taking your audience from it's like everybody, for the most part, like, we all share like the whole space, and I think that's one thing that I really like about working with like media people here.
Right. Yeah. And I mean, there's not really the guardedness for the most part over, oh, well, I asked that question or you asked that question. It's like, you're all in the same space. I mean, that's what press conferences are about. I mean, you all have kind of access to the same information. I mean, I remember writing, this was like a U.S. Trinidad game in Denver, and, the late, great Grant Wall, I remember, we were at the same press conference getting the same quotes, and we're writing about 20 feet from each other in the press box, like after the game, like we went back up after the mix zone and all that, and, looked at his story, and I mean, we're pulling things from a lot of the same quotes because we have to. I mean, those are the kind of nuggets, but, just the work and just being able to kind of reference what other people are doing is great. Like, Moon Tower, they'll make really good point, and I'll bring that up in an article, North End podcast with all the crumbs that they were coming up with in the preseason.
That was cool.
It was just, I mean, it was incredible work, and it was like, and everybody's bringing this kind of different facet to it. And, for me, I think it's just good to be able to point that out and like still try to offer, the people who come to my platform, there's definitely things that I'm trying to do in terms of my approach, in terms of my perspective that, I hope, serves a, pretty broad section of the constituency, but also, there's definitely going to be kind of my own voice and flavor in that. So, and that's the thing. Like, I mean, if it's growing to the point now where if you want to feel, like really good and happy about Austin FC, there's definitely media platforms you can go to within the city that do that. If you want to be like really angry and bitter, there are also platforms that you can go to for that. And, if you want to go through the whole, kind of circuitous journey, from somebody who has a lot of different, kind of life experiences, like literally, that's kind of my approach, that sometimes I am going to be, a little bit cynical, a little bit questioning. Sometimes I'm going to be celebratory. A lot of times I'm just going to be kind of amused with all that is happening,
Right.
and just
The
try
decision
to convey that.
making.
Yeah, I mean, just the decision making, like things that happen in games, like just kind of the certain quirky, CONCACAF sort of things that can occur. I mean, obviously CONCACAF still may be kind of a sore subject with some of us, but
it's like I love it. I love being part of it because we're always something. We always give some. There's always something like that happens. Oh, yeah, there goes CONCACAF again.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's you want to obviously kind of process the emotions that come with each win, loss, and draw, but there's also an opportunity to kind of weave it into a larger narrative, that I think we're all richer for. Like, I think, when we all pass on, the people who love us are going to, in part remember, oh yeah, this was a thing that they really loved. They really love the sport. They really love this team. They really love this community, and this, this becomes the fabric. This becomes really all of us get to experience this and share in this together. We have our individual journeys within it, but there's also, this collectivism. I was just thinking on the drive here about the first home game and everybody congregating at Hop Squad and just all the energy and the excitement and the enthusiasm around that. I mean, that's special. You get to, that we get to live that comes here in our city. We get to experience that on that level. And then this story kind of continues on from that initial fantastic moment. Lots led up to it. Lots came after, but just kind of being able to, bask in that one moment of time and realize, yeah, this is fantastic. Right. This thing that's happening to me, to people that I appreciate, and to this city that I, continue to live in and continue to love.
It doesn't like say, we always think of, how can you contribute, right? How can you contribute to the city? I'm all for, finding ways to help a place be better. You can't change everything, but at least whatever you can do, what can you make it better? And then as how we communicate, I'm glad that's being able to, get everybody that has a different point of view, get, feel like we related. Okay, it's not just the one person and that's it. It's 4 or 5 people out, groups out there that are creating something where they can feel related to, their audience can feel related to them. And that's good. I think hopefully one day, we get some kind of documentary done, but like say from talking about like a Netflix or a bigger place where he talks about like, really what happened in Austin 50 years from now.
That'd be fun. Yeah.
And that'd be something that, oh wow, like, you've seen it, you see it how they do it, Boca and River, you see it how they do it, Real Madrid, America. It'll be awesome to have that in based on what we did here in the city. But I want to talk about the 2 books that you wrote.
Okay, great.
And how that, how, you sort of, you still did your creative writing, but that's when okay, you know what, I'm going to focus a lot on soccer, and then this is going to be my sort of my bread and butter. Yeah.
So it actually, like I would say like probably around like 2011, 2012, like I was increasingly getting interested in soccer and wanting to write about that as part of what I was doing. And just kind of my journey. I mean, there was, obviously from World Cup to World Cup, one pivotal one was 2002, which was in Korea and Japan, because my oldest son, who's now 22, just about, he was a newborn. And so we were basically watching games together while I was feeding him at like, 2 and 3 in the morning. Nice. I was on ESPN, like, oh, there's these games on. And I had this kind of continual, perpetual rekindling through World Cups, and then got interested in Arsenal because of France and Henry, and then obviously, Wenger. And so that kind of continued on. So basically I started just doing some blogging, did some SB Nation stuff for a while, and then approached the league about doing some stuff, and just, had a few stories kind of supporter adjacent. One of my first ones was this group called Taco that I had come across, which is Timbers Army Covert Operations. So it was Portland fans in Seattle. had a group, which was really, really fun to write about. So,
Yeah.
and, obviously growing up in Seattle,
Mhm.
I knew obviously about the rivalry and, so just kind of seeing that behind enemy lines, I thought was really funny.
And that's before Portland Timbers were, I think.
No, that was a few years after they,
Okay.
after they entered the league. Yeah. So this was, I started doing work for the league, I would say like around probably, I want to say like 2014, 2015, kind of at that same time. So basically I had this crazy idea in 2014.
Mhm.
I wanted to go to a different city every day in the US and watch World Cup games.
Okay.
And so started doing some research on that, put some stuff together around that, took some photos, did some interviews, was trying to pitch that around as a book, and happened upon an agent who took me on, and they were selling that. And I had, kind of at this time also began to, think about MLS a little bit,
Mhm.
paying attention to that a little bit more. But a lot of it was just kind of like dictated by, what came through on cable, like with soccer, I was, more easily exposed to and all that. So, so basically what happened is the agent said, okay, we've got this press. This is the Overlook Press,
Mhm.
a book publisher in New York. They really like your voice. They're interested. Do you want to do a history of MLS? And I was like, okay, not exactly what I anticipated, but I got to pursue that project and basically, got a very modest advance, and basically spent the next year of my life researching and doing interviews and really delving into the league history. And it was absolutely fascinating, and definitely wanted to do it from supporters' perspective. So that was a lot of what was in the book, but also talked to some people who were there, like right at the beginning, like some of the foundational people with like, DC United. Had this incredible conversation with like the original owner of the Miami Fusion. Had this great conversation with Ray Hudson, who was, coach for the Fusion and briefly for DC United, and briefly crossed paths with Freddie Adu before he went off to his, illustrious broadcasting career. Yeah. So, just all this amazing, just kind of history, just kind of weaving through, trying to, year by year, piece by piece, tell the story of the league. And so that one, so book came out, and then that did well enough to have a paperback version. So, and by that time I was doing a lot of writing for the league. So, I was definitely kind of establishing those soccer writing foundations.
You were doing writing for MLS?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So I was doing some features, and then I was starting to do some match coverage. So basically was kind of doing that in addition to, just the other teaching and writing that I've been doing. And then, so Peter Meyer, who was the head of the Overlook Press, who started that, my publisher, great guy, only like really got to engage with him a few times, but he was kind of wonderful each time. So he checks in with me. This would have been like, I guess, probably late 2016 after we were doing the paperback. And he's like, Phil, I want to know why the U.S. men have not been able to win a World Cup yet. Well, he actually said the U.S. and I said, well, the women have won a few, but so corrected him on that. And he's like, would you like to write a book about that? I'm like, okay. You got to go through my agent. So I talked to my agent. It's like, look, Peter wants me to do another book. So they worked things out, got another modest advance, and then did another year of research. And again, the whole premise is, yes, the U.S. is on this pathway to winning a World Cup. At some point, they're not quite there yet, obviously, but there's gains that they're making. I'm putting the finishing touches on the book
of the
of I believe that we will win. Yeah.
Okay.
October 10th, 2017. It's my wife's 40th birthday.
Okay.
We're about to go out, but I need to, obviously, before we can do that, finish watching the U.S. Trinidad and Tobago game, which is going to get the U.S. qualified into the World Cup. That does not work out. So
that changes everything.
it changes everything. I had to do a rewrite on the book. You know, like I contacted them right after and it's like, okay, look, I have to change stuff. I wrote this under the premise that they were going to make the 2018 World Cup. So that changed things about the book, obviously. I mean, the New York Times like did a thing on, you know, my plan's gone awry. So there was the Jonathan Gonzalez thing too that had happened where he did like the one-time switch in early 2018. And he was like kind of the centerpiece of a chapter about US-Mexico dual nationals.
Right.
So I had to make some changes on that too. So the book came out. And I mean, I think for a kind of time capsule at that time, I think it's still really good. I think there's a lot of really interesting things that I was able to find. I had a lot of really good conversations, talked about kind of the MLS's role in things, talked about Alianza de Football, you know, kind of what they were doing. And that's where the Jonathan Gonzalez stuff came from. And then
Jonathan Gonzalez, he was playing in Monterrey and he chose to play for Mexico.
Yeah, he did the one-time switch like right after they didn't make the World Cup. And then didn't quite go where people expected him to. But, you know, at that point I thought he was committing to the US. It's like, oh yeah, we're set at D-mid for a decade. You know, not the case, but you got hopeful at the times. He had some definite promise in that. So yeah, so I did that book that came out. And then by that time, I was doing a lot more league stuff. And then all the momentum obviously was happening around MLS coming to Austin. So fell in with that and, you know, actually did some work at the club for a while before the first season. And then basically that contract stopped. And then I started doing stuff with the Striker at that point.
How was when the first new team, how was it like working for Austin FC and doing the contract work?
It was good. It was fun. It was really hard to come up with stuff at the time. Like we started doing some coverage of like the academy teams, but like the club didn't want player names to be used. So they didn't want to like elevate one above the other and all that. So I was talking to Tyson Wall about the teams and their performances in like these kind of very general terms. Right. So, and then spent a lot more time than I ever imagined that I would a few years earlier watching Guarani games. Trying to scout Rodney Redis, you know, when he was getting ready to come here, and it's like, oh yeah, he looks like he's pretty solid on corner kicks. Like, he looks like a pretty promising player. Of course, that was, you know, under the filter of watching, you know, the Paraguayan First Division, watching Libertadores, and we know kind of the rest of the story there. But so that was fun. I mean, I got the opportunity to, you know, kind of get to know some of the people and, you know, do some writing and things like that. But you know, obviously I think it's more fun to cover the team from a distance. I mean, you know, obviously being involved with the club, you get a lot of access. There's a lot of, I think, perks with that, but kind of not even more maybe extreme than with MLS. Like there are certain kind of guardrails around kind of what you can do. You know, there's definitely kind of like more checks, right? And like with the Striker and especially now with what I do, you know, I know kind of my guardrails. I know like what I want to do in terms of, you know, just basic journalism ethics, but I get a lot more freedom to write about things and to express things and all that in that context. So, I mean, obviously for me in terms of the storytelling, you know, because the borders on it are expanded, that it's a lot of fun.
And the Striker, when was it originally founded?
I want to say 2020. 2020,
okay.
Yeah, 2019, 2020 in there. And then, I think 2020. And then I got involved in 21. Pretty early on, like February or March. And then became managing editor in July 22. Actually kind of June, July in that window. And then kept going for another year before, you know, basically just it went on a hiatus that it, you know, is not really going to come back from, I don't think. So basically just, you know, there were owners that were looking to sort of leave it. There were new owners that were coming in. There were kind of, you know, I'll just leave it at, there were kind of some disagreements in what direction to go. And, you know, at that point it was kind of hard to maintain the energy for it, to raise the money that we needed to, you know, continue to pay the staff and all that. So, which is tough because you know, you're seeing, you know, SB Nation making decisions with that. I mean, it's a really, really difficult time to do media. Right. I mean, you're seeing, you know, a lot of people that are doing really hard work as journalists. And then there are just kind of some unfortunate economic realities. Right. Like if you can monetize it and make it work in a way to sustain it, that's great. But the bigger a site is and the more people you have involved and the more ambitious you are, the more money it takes and the more effort it takes to raise that money. And that can be really, really challenging.
Yeah, because I mean, it's working in the business. A lot of the times you're always looking into, okay, based on the impressions you had on the website, how many people actually bought the product that you're selling.
Right.
It's similar to, I'm pretty sure, how the Striker went in regards to, like, okay, we have this idea, but, it's tough because, especially like it's different whenever you have a home base, here in office, but then covering teams outside of that are in different places that can be, that can cost. But say after,
and it's difficult too, because I mean, like one thing that we ran into, like in Dallas in particular, was that people saw us as an Austin publication, and there were some people that just kind of turned off to us just because our headquarters were in Austin. Yeah. Even though John Arnold was doing a lot of the work, he was the Dallas reporter for most of the time. It's like, oh my God, you have one of the best soccer journalists in North America, bilingual, CONCACAF expert in your backyard, covering your team, doing all this work, and you're going to reject it just because the guy who signs the check lives in Austin? Like, that's ridiculous.
Right. It's, I don't know. People are weird sometimes.
Yeah. Well, it's just, I mean, it's the whole rivalry thing. I mean, it's just, some people will let that rivalry kind of go to these sort of extremes. And I think some people just sort of like to be mad. Yeah. So, they're going to do that and deprive themselves of, really good things that are there. Yeah.
Unfortunately.
Yeah.
But to say after the Striker was done, I know it was probably a challenging time. How did you overcome that change? And then now you're teaching at Texas State?
Well, I teach at UTSA. I've been doing that for a while. Yeah, okay. That's how I have health insurance. So, and I like doing that work as well. So yeah, I've been teaching in some form or another in university settings and college settings since 2000. Okay. Actually, since I got my MFA. Basically, I mean, what happened after that is I had this decision to make. It was like either, okay, I can kind of take this hiatus, I can reset, I can kind of decide, okay, is soccer for me, and lose kind of all this momentum. Because right before the decision was made to go on hiatus, I mean, we were definitely having upticks in traffic. There were definitely strategic things that we were doing that was helping. Like we were starting to chart some plans for kind of reimagining the model a little bit, still subscriber based, but things that I thought would have been really, really helpful and would have really helped sustain it. So, ideas that I still have, if there are ever, investors out there who want to bring back the band in some form.
Let's bring back the band.
But it was either, okay, I can take this hiatus, or, I know that there are people out there who are hungry for it, because we do have subscribers. We do have people that were, regularly part of it, and also people that were willing to pay to have this coverage come, that understood the value of journalism and understood what it takes in terms of time, in terms of energy, in terms of just kind of the dedication that we have to do. And so kind of the decision at that point, I knew that there were people who had, when SB Nation decided to kill most of their soccer sites for no good reason, a lot of those people went to Substack. John Arnold was developing his Substack on CONCACAF coverage when he was still doing stuff with the Striker. And at that point, it's like, okay, I can pivot to this platform that, now, there are some problematic things about it. Right. But for the most part, it's something where I can reliably publish, I can reliably, collect, subscriber dollars and kind of see how that's going, and making sure that, that I'm not getting ripped off or anything like that. Right. And then, continue to do that work and have something that is flexible enough and nimble enough where, I can publish quickly, I can get stuff out there. It won't break, social media sites when I post links, except for Twitter, which is a dumpster fire, and everything breaks their links anyway now because they're garbage at this point. Elon has ruined it. End of rant. But basically, it was just, I wanted to do the work. I wanted to continue to do that reporting. I love telling the stories, and, thankfully a lot of people came on right away and said, yeah, we want you to continue doing this. here's my $6 a month, here's my $50 a year. Let's do this. And it's been, growing decently since, right? So I always want to get more subscribers. I always want to reach more people, but, very happy with where things have gone. And, my wife was really impressed that, so many people came over right away, because we were, because it was a bit of a, it was a bit of a leap to, decide, okay, I'm going to do the Striker. I left another managing editing job to do that. So I've had to kind of, reset and fold in other freelance stuff since then to, just kind of get my mix right, in terms of the work that I want to do. But I'm really grateful that the club, has continued to see the value in the work and given me access. And I'm just, I'm grateful to all the people out there who are supporting it. So it is. And the comments that I've gotten, oftentimes I don't respond to some of the comments because they fold in at like a weird place in the site, and there's no real place to like back and forth, but I see them, and it's definitely, it's sustaining. It's cool to have people say, I like the way that you cover this team. Someone at Coachella said that, I'm a subscriber, I like the way you write, and that's gratifying. I mean, I know that, I've been doing this a long time. I kind of know where I'm at as a writer, but to hear other people saying, yes, we enjoy this, we value what you're doing. That's important. I mean, and I would say, for anybody out there, if you like what anybody out there in the Austin media or anybody creative is doing, like, just drop them a quick line, tell them, like, it's super helpful.
It is. I think one thing that I mean, what helped is just, seeing, going into the subtrack, and then also adding your touch to it, and in the way you want to write. You also kept in mind your ethics. You didn't derail from, okay, you know what, I have this platform, I'm just gonna say whatever I want. Like, you kept it, okay, like, yes, I am gonna add that Phil West touch to it, but I'm gonna still be, as ethical as I can. And it's good because I think sometimes whenever we do stuff our own, I mean, the responsibility falls on us, solely on us. So our name is in the line, and everything we say is on the line. But I'm also glad the fact that you continue to pursue this new, subtrack, because one, I mean, it keeps you fresh. It keeps you going. It keeps you, it keeps the motor well oiled, and you're not in a stopping point where you're like, okay, this is it, it's over. You found a way to basically call out. If you were in a situation where you felt like, oh, this sucks, I mean, you found a way to, okay, now it's, I don't know how it is compared to the past, but you're getting somewhere. Yeah, I mean, it's part of it is I kind of can't quit it. I think I'm always going to write. Yeah. So, like Jim Carroll, who was this kind of interesting writer and musician who did a lot of writing in the 70s, 80s, up in the New York scene. Like, he died of a heart attack writing at his desk. That might be me. Why not? That might be the way that I go, because I'm doing this so much, and I'm always sort of fascinated by certain things that I latch onto, that I want to write about, and it's a way that, it's a way that I process the world. And it's also a way that, for Austin FC stuff, that I process, my love of the sport. And also it's the way that I kind of enter into, the community conversations. I mean, that's been a fascinating thing with just, like Slack, for example. A lot of this work was happening, kind of during the pandemic. Right. So, what a wonderful thing. Like, sometimes I'm not at the most ease at in public gatherings and things like that. So, I mean, I do like talking, but I'm more of an ambivert, right? Yeah. So, there are times where, I'll want to talk, I'll engage with a lot of people, and then it's like, whoa, I need to be by myself for a little bit here. I need to kind of recharge the battery in that way. And with writing, be it stuff on Slack, stuff online, stuff that I'm doing in my work, it's a way where I can really enter into the conversation and say, hey, here's maybe a way to think of it, or wow, this person made a really interesting point, or,
here's something that jumped out at me in this press conference that, Josh Wolf said, or that Brad Stuber said that, I think merits some contemplation.
That's good.
Yeah.
That's good. Now we all appreciate your work here. And then before we wrap up, and I just want to ask you, what do you think of the preseason? How, I would say, your point of view, where do you see Austin will end up in the table at the end of the season?
It's a lot of questions. So first of all, I wish I'd seen more of the preseason.
Yeah.
But I do want to shout out Coachella Valley Invitational, and special thanks to the person out there that donated miles for me to be able to fly out to see the game. It was great. Yeah. I mean, that event's fantastic. It's a way to see a lot of teams up close. If you time it right, like I went Saturday, Sunday, so obviously I saw Austin, but I got to see a lot of other teams too, and just kind of get a sense of where they were at that stage. Not comprehensive, obviously, but it's like I got terrified of LAFC all over again. Because I got to stand behind the goal where Bawanga got free of 3 defenders and put a ball on a postage stamp to the far post to Oliveira, who headed it in. So that was fun. So I think, obviously, I think the team's making progress. I think the kind of defensive fundamentals that Wolf is talking about are probably needed given the amount of goals that they let in.
Last year,
Yeah, I get the sense that unless, there's some other stuff being worked around, I think that the fullbacks are going to be a little bit more sort of cautious in the buildup, and they're not just going to, run down the channels and hoof in across, right? I think there's going to be a more purposeful approach to what they do. Definitely like some of the new players they've gotten, and I think that those people will be helpful. I would love to see more players to fill out the roster, because that hasn't quite happened yet.
A couple more.
But there was, again, when you kind of saw the amount of people who were departing, some of who surprised me, at the end of last season, you kind of knew, okay, this is going to maybe take a while to build back.
Right.
So I feel like it's going to be, I'm going to go ahead and steal from Moon Tower. And give a range of like 3 places, and steal most of their ranges because it's the one that makes sense. 8th through 10th, which is weird because again, that could be the play-in game, that could be just missing the playoffs. But I kind of feel like that's where it's at right now. But a lot of it just depends on the summer, right? So if Kylian Mbappe decides that he wants to play in Austin in July, then that changes everything, obviously, right? So
now careful, Wanga.
Yeah, that probably will not happen, right? But were you to get some kind of major talent at striker in the roster, then obviously it would be,
changes a lot.
Oh, it would be just, obviously seismic in terms of what it would do. But, that's not likely. But if it's a striker who comes in, who's capable, kind of like a, Giacomakis kind of player, then that also makes a big difference, right? So, just kind of, my questions going in are, is the defense going to be better, since that has been such an emphasis? And are there things being done in the offense to better unlock Driussi? Because you obviously saw him unlocked in 22 with a lot of the triangles, a lot of what Fagundes was doing, a lot of the fullback play. And then in 23, that kind of changed somehow. I think towards the end of 22, Austin kind of got found out a little bit.
Right.
And so I think 23 was Wolf trying to correct for that. And obviously kind of mixed results. You could see the concepts of what he was doing. The 3-box-3 was kind of interesting, but I don't know that necessarily, as we saw from the sub 40-point performance, necessarily worked out. So kind of curious to see what new adjustments will be made. And I think it's this balance between, with Wolf, like wanting to be a deep thinker, wanting to be cerebral, wanting to have a system that, definitely kind of kicks pretty possession-based soccer into this new level. But then I also think, okay, is this executable? Particularly with the personnel who's there.
Right.
So I think that's kind of a learning process for him. But I think that's also, something where I think a lot of players on the team, like this is I think kind of a make or break for a few,
I do got a feeling, I was also thinking of that is, I think this season with having a Frodo in the preseason present, that takes away a lot of responsibility from Wolf.
Yeah.
And also, as with Driussi, how much responsibility does he have? Is he going to be the leader that we all thought he wanted him to be? or is he going to be more of the creative? You know, let someone else do all the talking. I'll do the talking with my feet. You know, like let's say even the how Ring and Wolf, how their dynamic is this year compared to last year.
Right.
The defense, the corrections. I know we brought in a couple more players. But there's still, I feel like there's some depth that the team needs. So I think it's gonna be a season where Wolf is gonna be very on edge.
Well, last year just started so weird.
Yeah.
I mean, a few days in the year you have the whole Berhalter Reina thing, the post World Cup fallout, which was not good anyway. Right. You have
Gabrielson leaving.
Yeah, you had Gabrielson leaving. You had, obviously, it was just, and then you have Cascante injure himself like 7 minutes into the opener, which kind of completely threw things for a loop. And then you put in Kip Keller, and perhaps he was not ready. Right.
Speaking of, I don't know if you saw the was it yesterday in Saprissa, they were playing and someone did an own goal.
Oh yeah,
and it was actually own goal, but they was trying to make a pass from the midfield to the goalie, but the ball bounced right before the goalie tried to get it.
Yeah, that was Saprissa Union. That was CONCACAF Champions Cup action. Yeah,
another CONCACAF Cup moment.
Oh yeah. No, it's just that tournament is beautiful for that. Yeah, it was crazy. Yeah, and then there was a bunch of yellow card action, and then that game was completely crazy, and then the Union went up, and then Saprissa got a goal like right towards the end to perhaps make things interesting. And we saw Austin FC legend Ulysses Segura in that game briefly,
who's killing it. But no, that's good. I hope there's a turnaround, or some kind of, I would say, stability in the team. And because I always say if the team does well, if Josh has a good day, everybody's gonna have a good day. In Austin, or a good week. So he has a lot of responsibility on his plate, but I think he also has the support of someone knowledgeable like Rodo.
Yeah.
And I don't know how much input he will have on the decisions on how the team will play, but at least behind him is like, okay, I'm gonna be the person that has your back in case you need something, and that's good. I think that's always what you need.
Yeah, and I don't think we're going to laminate the season predictions again. I mean, Josh pretty much said as much today, said it was very much a Felipe instigated thing. But it's kind of okay, here we are again. Everybody's underestimating us. There are very low expectations from the punditry as to how the team's going to do. Even obviously, from what I just said, from what, Moon Tower said in their show, our expectations being close to the team, covering it for Austin fans, it's not oh yeah, we're going top 4, baby. It's we might sneak into the playoffs. Right. That's kind of as optimistic as we're willing to be. But I think it's interesting. And just, again, MLS different every year. Yes. It's very, very hard. Everybody thought St. Louis is going to be terrible going into the season, and then all of a sudden it's wow,
first place.
They did some good things there. Right. So you just it's a very unpredictable league, which is why I love it, right? So Premier League, I'm an Arsenal fan, but it's okay, there are anywhere from 1 to 6 teams who really have a realistic chance of winning this.
Yes.
Every year, right? Yeah, so, and 6, it's oh boy, it's a horse race,
The
where a lot of times it's okay, it's going to be City again, isn't it? Right. So, but MLS, truly, truly unpredictable, I think, a lot of years. You can have some senses of where teams are going to be, who might be truly wretched, but then even St. Louis last year proved, okay, everybody thought they knew what was going on there, and they did some things that were really pretty inventive. They got a lot of core players in super early and worked, and they got a system that was interesting that they were able to execute. And there was a lot of home field advantage, and they managed to, do some really good things, especially out of the gate, and piled up points that allowed them to then, lose to their rivals in their first round of the playoffs. But it happens.
But they made it.
But they made it there.
Yeah, they made
Damn
it. Fortunately for them, unfortunately for us. But Phil, I really appreciate you coming and sharing your story.
For sure.
It's great. I think I always wanted to start the beginning of the season with someone that knows and isn't very involved in every aspect and you were like, okay, let me contact Phil so we can hear about his story, but also his thoughts on the team.
Thanks for reaching out. I appreciate being here.
Appreciate you. What I'll do is I'll drop a link of your books, and I'll drop a link of your Substack
Substack,
description. The Substacks. I keep saying Substack.
It's hard to say.
Substack.
It's a weird word.
I'll drop the link of your Substack in the description of this episode. And yeah, you follow him. Check out his content. He's an amazing writer. Always something fun that he comes up with. And last but not least, I do want to mention a couple of things. One is, this episode is going to be released basically on the 23rd.
So on Friday?
Yeah, not Thursday.
Okay, so tomorrow.
Tomorrow, yeah.
22nd.
22nd. It's going to be released on the 22nd. So that means Friday, the supporters in Austin are going to have an event called Verde Fest. A lot of some of the band players from La Murga have their own band, and they're going to be performing. So it's always a pretty cool place. Especially if you're trying to get involved in the culture, this is where it's at. This is where you're going to meet a lot of people.
Right. And that moved this year, right? Because it used to be at Oscar Blues, which now sadly is closed. Months before they were going to get all these people delivered to them by train.
Right. It sucks, man.
Yeah. So where is it?
It's at Meanwhile Brewery.
Okay, nice.
And I'll drop the address as well. Starts at 6:00 and it's gonna be over at 11. 5 bands are gonna be playing.
Or thereabouts.
So yeah, and I'll be emceeing also. And the last thing is the tifo is gonna be coming through. If you guys check it out, share your pictures of the tifos and send them to us, and we can share them here. That gives some kind of support to the artist that that they created the tifo, and also a previous artist an artist of previous tifos, Joe Corral. He is doing an art show.
Oh, nice! Yeah,
March 2nd at Austin Beer Works in Springdale location. He's basically getting every person that did a photography or some kind of painting that that's around Austin FC or around the club, and portray their work, and they can also sell it. So
nice. Yeah, my Twitter avatar actually I commissioned Joel to do.
Nice.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool. So yeah, it's one of those that there's always everybody here is always doing something. So if you want to show some love, support, there's other ways you can do it this way. But yeah, anything else, just hit me up, and I wish you guys a good weekend, a safe weekend. And I'm so glad this train station is going to open.
Yeah, see you Saturday.
For sure.
Or if not before. Right?
Se cuidan, se portan bien, y arriba el América.